So, the reveal of The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD during this past week's Nintendo Direct was definitely a divisive and polarizing reveal. I'm sure most of you already know that a lot of people are definitely happy and excited about it, which does include myself, but a lot of people are not so happy and find a lot of problems with what Nintendo's doing. There are several complaints and issues that a lot of people are taking with the game, from the overall look and the amount of HDifying they may or may not have done to the graphics, to some of their decisions with the controls and adapting the motion to buttons, to, most importantly, and the thing we're really focusing on today, the price of the game. So this has already been a very hot topic on the internet over the course of the past few days, and on YouTube as well. Plenty of people talking about it and making videos discussing and breaking down the whole pricing scheme that Nintendo is doing with Skyward Sword HD. Plenty of tweets, plenty of comments. It's a pretty big deal. And so, yeah, you've probably heard many people talk about it already, but I also have some of my own thoughts. I want to chime in a little bit here because it's a bit messy what's going on, I think, with Skyward Sword. It's a very tricky, nuanced conversation to navigate, I think, and my opinions definitely make it hard because I'm somebody who's so very excited for this game. I'm very happy that it's coming. I'm gladly going to be buying it for the full price when it launches, on my birthday, by the way. But also, yeah, I do actually see some of the problems, and I see and understand the complaints a lot of people are lodging. So it's not a black and white situation. There's just a lot on both sides here. Of course, before we dive any deeper into the Skyward Sword HD topic, I do want to remind you that I'm always trying to grow the channel here on Rule of Two Review. I upload and post several videos every single week talking about all things Nintendo. We spend plenty of time on Metroid. We focus on Metroid here, actually. But I also cover all things gaming. So as you watch this video, if you seem to like what I'm doing and you like what you hear, then hopefully you will consider subscribing to the channel to help me cross many more milestones very soon. So diving back into the Skyward Sword thing, I do want to remind you of my own opinion, which I kind of briefly stated here at the beginning, and it can't be denied, man. I love this game. I've loved it since it launched on the Wii back in 2011. I purchased and owned it day one, and I loved it when I played it back then, my 2 or 3 replays ever since, and so I'm already by default a huge fan of this game. It was always divisive, even when it released on the Wii back in the day. I'm sure many of us remember, if you're old enough to have remembered when that game launched. But even through that division back in 2011, I defended the game, and I said, I love it, I think it's a really good Zelda game. In fact, I think it's even a great game. It really, truly is. And so coming into the HD release on the Switch, since I'm already a built-in fan, I'm already excited for this game. Like, I'm ready to buy it. I was somebody who has been defending the idea of it for the past 2 years. A lot of people, most people, thought Skyward Sword would never come to the Switch, or that it would never even leave the Nintendo Wii because of the motion controls. Even ignoring the fact that the Joycons are the perfect device to make the motion controls work, and for literally the past 2 years, or maybe even longer, I've said that, yeah, I think it's possible. Now, of course, I never could have known for sure they were going to do it, but as Nintendo and IG Aonuma started to drop hints over the years, every time that happened, I was like, you know what, guys? I just think it really could happen, and I think that it's possible, both with motion on the Joy-Cons and with button controls. So this is all to say that I personally am really excited and I'm happy to buy it. I am going to be purchasing this game when it releases. I know it's launching at $60, which a lot of people are disappointed by. That, again, it's the genesis of this whole conversation, is the fact that it's a full-priced single game, an HD port, a remaster, and most people feel like it's not worth it, especially when comparing it to the efforts of some other companies and some other games and remasters over the years. And they're all good points, and I'm going to get into that stuff because it's absolutely worth talking about and addressing. But I am a fan. I know how I choose to spend my money and what I'm comfortable spending my money on, and this is something I'm comfortable spending my own money on. I work very hard for my money so that I can do whatever I want with my money. And it's just, I mean, at this point, like I said, it's just such a great game. I'm just really happy to buy this game. I'm sure most of you are aware, but as a quick reminder, when Nintendo put 2 other HD Zelda remasters on the Wii U last generation, they also charged full price. Both the Wind Waker and Twilight Princess were $59.99 on the Wii U, and almost no one complained. I mean, there were some discussions about it for sure, but in general, it was a widely accepted thing, and it wasn't a huge deal. You could argue, because the Wii U just wasn't a very popular console, that there was just a smaller audience of people to even form an opinion about it, and I do think that that is true. But there still was a very vocal contingent of fans that were constantly talking about and discussing the Wii U, including myself and several of my friends and my other fellow YouTubers. I mean, I was running the channel during those years. I loved and supported the Wii U, and I bought those games for full price, and I didn't even bat an eye. I was ready to do it. Now, there's a couple of differences there. One, it does seem like Nintendo went above and beyond in terms of updating the visuals and the textures and the lighting and all of the graphics for those games compared to what they've done to Skyward Sword. That is true. It doesn't look like they did a whole lot to Skyward Sword. It just looks HD. And while I think it looks beautiful, you can't deny that Wind Waker and Twilight Princess had more effort put into the visual update. And then you also throw in the fact that those games used the gamepad, the Wii U gamepad, for plenty of features. And I know a lot of people maybe didn't like the gamepad, but whether you liked it or not, it doesn't matter, because the effort was put in to make the gamepad compatible with those games and to add new features that didn't already exist. With Skyward Sword, the only things they truly did was, again, they just made it a straight HD. It doesn't look like any textures or any lighting was updated in the game. Maybe they confirmed that that's not the case, but based on the quick trailer and footage we saw, I think we can all agree it only looks like they made it HD. And they took already existing motion controls and just mapped them identically from one controller on the Wii to the current controllers on the Joycons. The only thing they really took the time to do and change control-wise, you know, just like they did with the gamepad on the Wii U versions, is they found a way to make the motion controls work with buttons by mapping the sword swings to the right analog stick, which is cool, and I'm excited to see how that feels, even though I plan on continuing to play this game with motion on the Switch. It's like that's really the one main thing they probably spent most of their time on this game, at least until they confirm any other updates or changes. We have to give Nintendo time to tell us that they've done more than what they've shown so far. I don't really think they did do anything else, but there's a chance they did, and if they tell us that stuff in the future, then that could help. But for myself, as a fan of this game, it's like, you know what? This game is more than a generation old. It's not a direct port of a game that I played just a few years ago on the last generation, the Wii U. This was a game that was always only in SD, standard definition. It has not ever been made officially in HD, and so for these reasons, and, you know, like I said, I bought full-price Wind Waker and Twilight Princess on the Wii U as well, so for these reasons, for me, it falls into the category of something I'm willing to buy and I'm excited to buy on day one, even if it's full price. Would I have preferred a discount price? Absolutely. Like, I'm not a maniac. I would always prefer a discount price in a situation like this, but they're not doing it. This is the same thing they've done in prior games, and so this is my plan, is to buy this game. I'm very excited for it. Now, we also have to look at the other end of this argument, which is why people feel that this game is overpriced. And here's the thing. I can even say and admit that, you know, this game probably is a little bit overpriced. That's why I was just saying I would even prefer this game to be a discount price. Because at the end of the day, even though it falls in line with what they did with Wind Waker and Twilight Princess on the Wii U, and because I'm just such a big fan, I'm happy to buy it at this price when it launches, at the end of the day, I think it's safe to say that, yeah, Nintendo probably shouldn't be charging as much for this game, or they should either be adding a bunch more features to this game that we don't yet know about, or including it in a collection with other games. I talked about this on a recent video, how I was happy to buy the Super Mario 3D All-Stars collection, because those are 3 games that are more than a generation old. They were always in standard definition. Now they were made available in HD in a package. So to me, it was worth $60 when most people thought even that wasn't worth $60. And even though they're doing that with Zelda this time, and it makes sense and I'm going to be buying it, there's a case to be made for, and I thought about this after I made that video, by the way, there's a case to be made for if Super Mario Galaxy on the Nintendo Wii was worth including, only made HD, was worth including as a collection with 2 other games for a total of 3. It's kind of like what they're doing with Skyward Sword is really almost the exact same thing that they're doing with Mario Galaxy on 3D All-Stars. Yet, Galaxy was included in a collection of 3 games, and Skyward Sword is being sold by itself for $60. This would be the same thing as if Nintendo took Galaxy and sold it by itself for $60. And I think that most of us would have had a problem with that. So as I've continued to think about it and put the pieces together, my excitement for the game has not changed, but my understanding of people's complaints about the price has made more and more sense. Of course, we then have this fantastic and now very famous meme or post image that somebody made that I shared, of course, and a lot of people have been talking about this. This is a comparison of what Nintendo did with Skyward Sword 10 years ago on the Wii in 2011 compared to what they're doing now in 2021, and you can see the difference. They included both an actual orchestrated soundtrack on a physical disc where a symphony literally re-recorded a bunch of Zelda tracks, and they included that, as well as an actual Wii remote with Wii Motion Plus built into it, all for just $20 more than the average price. Wii games were typically $50, they sold this package for $70. But if you look at Skyward Sword today, you know, some people might talk about inflation, but I really don't think that applies much here. The default disc is $60 as opposed to the $50 for the Wii disc. And then if you want to get the actual themed Zelda Joy-Con controller like the Wii Motion Plus was for Skyward Sword, you'd have to spend an additional $80 to buy it for Skyward Sword on the Switch. That is a huge, huge difference. Now, some people have pointed out a very good point. Skyward Sword on the Wii required Wii Motion Plus, which was not built into every standard Wii remote in the Wii. And so because people absolutely needed this ability to play the game, they packaged it together, and that's why you had to have some sort of additional accessory to play the game. Skyward Sword on the Switch does not require these Zelda Joy-Cons to play it. We all want them, and so we're probably going to be spending an absurd amount of money to buy them for our collections, but they are not required to play the game, so technically, to get the ideal experience, you can cut out the $80 of the Joy-Cons and buy just the $60 Skyward Sword on the Switch. It's a great point, and it's a huge point when it comes to defending the price of the game 100%. And I'm really glad for it, because I'm somebody, again, who is excited for the game, and I'm defending the game, so I'm glad to see that this point exists. But at the end of the day, I still think when you look at the fact that we all want the Zelda-themed Wii Remote, we want the Zelda-themed Joy-Cons, you look at everything together here, and man, it just doesn't feel the same. It feels like Nintendo is dipping their hands a little bit too deeply into the cookie jar. Beyond that, there are plenty of examples of other companies and other games that have been remade or remastered being sold for less than the full price. And in fact, some of them are Nintendo, some of them are even Sony. Shadow of the Colossus remake was sold for only $40, and they massively redid that entire game. It was fantastic. It was beautiful. Most recently, on the PS5, is the Demon's Souls remake, which is sold for $70, so $10 more than Skyward Sword, but look at the difference. What they did, you almost can't even compared to what Nintendo is doing with Skyward Sword. They just made it HD, but the Demon's Souls remake is just so beautiful, and they rebuilt and redid 100% of that game. Same as Shadow of the Colossus. And then, when you compare Nintendo to Nintendo, it also doesn't look the best, because both Link's Awakening and Samus Returns, those games were remakes, built ground up, brand new, fantastic visuals, new content, all these great things, and they were sold for the standard price for each one of those games. But then here comes Skyward Sword, where they've done nothing but just gave it an HD polish, and again, they're selling it by itself. Also, comparing it to the Super Mario 3D All-Stars thing I did earlier is the same thing, and so there's plenty of these comparisons out there, and they're all very good points. And so when people say that this game is overpriced at $60, even though I'm not worried about it and I'm going to buy it, I gotta say, I totally hear these complaints, and at the end of the day, yeah, Nintendo is maybe charging a little bit too much money for this basic port of one game. So obviously this whole conversation, this whole debate is going to be subjective. Everyone is going to have their own different opinions and thoughts about what's going on and what this game is worth based on their fanship or their history with Zelda. I mean, how much money they even make could be a factor, or just if they just don't like the business practice. And, you know, like a lot of things that I discuss, I think that it's hard to say that anyone would actually be wrong in how they feel, because I think I'm a perfect example in that. I'm not bothered by it, so I'm going to be purchasing this game at full price on day one. And I don't think I'm making a mistake. I feel very comfortable with my choice and how I'm going to spend my own money. But I also think that everyone who has these complaints and is saying the game is overpriced clearly has a good point, as I discussed in this video. I mean, some of these facts just can't be denied. So, you know, everyone has their own kind of walk of life and their own opinion here, but this is where we stand. I think that I don't think it's crazy to say that Nintendo overpriced this game. Like I said, until they show us that maybe there's more in the game that we don't know about. If they show us there's so many changes and extra content and features that justify the price, everyone's opinion will change. Mine for sure will. But as of right now, with the information we have, I think it's overpriced. But I'm also still excited for it because I love the game. So that's how I feel. How do you feel? Talk about your opinions and your thoughts on what Nintendo is doing here, my conversation and breakdown, what you plan to do with this game. Are you buying it or not? And with that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Royalty Review, and I'll catch you next time on another video.